And under apartheid, the dispossession and the poverty of black people was legislated. It was law which prevented black people from owning the land, from owning certain business activities, from economically uplifting themselves. But this post-1994 government outdid apartheid in terms of the levels of inequality, and the inequality are still racialized. Meaning that actually apartheid just got to be worsened under the so-called democracy in South Africa.
People called a democratic black majority government control almost 2 trillion rands of money, and how come the situation is not changing?
Yeah, so you've got a puppet government which inherited a political power, or took over political power under a neoliberal and capitalist environment. And they've got puppet masters. If you go to the fresh produce market and check who are the people who are supplying them with fresh produce, it's more than 90% white farmers. And that is the reflection of a failed land reform program that got to not give land to our people in the period since 1994. So there's been dismal failure. It's 30 years now since the first inclusive elections in South Africa, but it's still less than 10% of agricultural and arable land that has been given to our people. And then that is one diagnostic that we can give in terms of the land situation, that this government has dismally failed to give land to our people and to empower our people to participate much more meaningfully in agriculture. The second issue that we must make diagnosis on is the levels of inequality. So, No,
I get it. It seems to me that it's not enough to simply say, in terms of those measures, Gini coefficient, ownership, and all of that, the situation hasn't changed. We need to take it a step further, that it has not changed by choice this time.
Yeah, it's
like people called a democratic black majority government control almost 2 trillion rands of the money, and how come the situation is not changing?
Yeah, it can say it's by choice, but also can give it a classical interpretation as well, that it's just an administration that is being a committee that manages the common affairs of the dominant capitalist class. That the very fact that a transition happened under a capitalist neoliberal framework, there was no role that a government post-1994 was going to have a significant say as to just what happens with the allocation of resources outside of the dictates, 1, of domestic capital, 2, of international capital, 3, of multinational institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. So you've got a puppet government which inherited a political power, or took over political power under whatever circumstances, under a neoliberal and capitalist environment. And they've got puppet masters, which primarily it's domestic capital, which the capitalists domestically will say, do this, do that. This is how we must manage your monetary and fiscal policy. And then you've got interest of global capitalism, and then you've got interest of the international financial institutions, primarily the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And those, by the way, they give direct instructions as to just what must happen on economic policy planning, on energy policy, on virtually everything else that the government does. So we really do not have an autonomous government that is able to perform its own functions outside of the dictates of global and domestic capitalism.
Okay, I think maybe...
then they still did look at that diagnostic.
Yes, in terms of the current conditions, yes.
So, in 1994, when the transition happened to now the inclusive electoral system, unemployment was 20%.
Yes.
And a lot of our people had some means of self-sustenance in small-scale agriculture and a variety of other activities. But there was relatively industrial zones, which were far much more expansive than is the case now. Now in South Africa, the expanded definition of unemployment puts us at more than 40% of unemployment. So under apartheid, you would have the major economic centers employing a lot of migrant workers. And then as part of population control, the apartheid government also got to subsidize a lot of industries in the homelands. So you had industries in the Transkei, in the Ciskei, in Bophuthatswana, in various sectors, in Venda, in Gazankulu, like proper industrial activities which were employing people in virtually all parts of South Africa. Even in the KwaZulu homeland, you had a lot of factories that were operational. So the levels of unemployment were far much lower because there was labor-absorptive industrial activity and factories that were employing our people. But then the neoliberal policies that got to be adopted or imposed on the ANC government since 1994, they took them voluntarily.
Yeah, this idea of a helpless ANC the West is pushing. I think those guys believed wholeheartedly. To this day, President Thabo Mbeki speaks very passionately about these policies. Why don't you give it to them?
Yeah, it's twofold. Like they were willing slaves of the neoliberal agenda because, for instance, the adoption of the growth, employment, and redistribution strategy, which was the most neoliberal perspective in 1996, was not wholly a domestic affair. It was actually imposed from elsewhere in terms of this is what South Africa should do. And that also interlinks to what got to happen in the transition, the loan which was taken from the IMF and the conditionalities that came thereof. Now, I want to link what just got to be the consequence of the adoption of gear and neoliberal policies. What those meant is that the state should lift all the subsidies and protection which was given to the industries, including the homeland industries and factories, which, by the way, were protected by apartheid government to be self-sustainable, to have tax incentives, to be financially viable. Then the post-1994 government was then in a policy environment that says that remove all those protections in favor of global competition, in favor of a global economy. You will import things if you need, you do not need to produce them. And that eroded thousands, if not millions of jobs in South Africa. It deindustrialized South Africa in a massive way, such that South Africa's economy is perennially not labor absorptive. It's not labor absorptive in a manner that is sustainable. Hence, there is now the over-celebration of social grants being the biggest recipients of government expenditure, instead of the wage being the means to redistribute the wealth of our country. So that is one of the issues that got to happen. So joblessness is a reality which was inflicted on our people, on generations, by an incapable and directionless government that did not have the foresight to see that neoliberalism is going to condemn you to permanent joblessness like we have currently. The post-1994 government outdid apartheid in terms of the levels of inequality.
Yeah.
Like we are the most unequal society in the world.
More than we were under apartheid.
More than we were under apartheid. I mean, under apartheid, the dispossession and the poverty of black people was legislated. It was law which prevented black people from owning the land, from owning certain business activities, from economically uplifting themselves.
From even applying for certain jobs.
Yes, from even applying for certain jobs.
Policies.
Yes, there were job reservation policies. But this post-1994 government outdid apartheid in terms of the levels of inequality, and the inequality are still racialized. Meaning that actually apartheid just got to be worsened under the so-called democracy in South Africa. So the economic apartheid is still a lived reality, and it's it's actually getting deeper and much more intense.
There you have it, guys. Our African leaders are really doing their best to show how much they've envisioned the future, a sustainable future for Africa and its inhabitants. But you know, here in Kwazemi, we also love to hear from the people of Africa and lovers of Africa in the comments. So we encourage you to watch the videos as we post them here on Kwazemi, and do not fail to share your comments in the comments where you express your views, especially as people who love Africa and really wish the best for the future of Africa. So whatever it is you've heard and whatever it is you have a feeling about the speech you've just heard, please make sure to put it down in the comments. Thank you for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please share and like and subscribe, because that's the way you support Kwazemi as a channel, an Afrocentric channel, where we try to understand deeper issues in African history and hopefully develop a collective intelligence on how we wish to build the Africa we want to see as people of Africa. See you in the next one.